So for many of you, it's really important to show up and have an inclusive brand, inclusive culture, and just to be welcoming to all kinds of individuals, whether they are more diverse than us or that they may represent certain communities that are underrepresented in general in terms of LGBTQ plus or individuals with disability, other things that may have going on. I want to give you today 4 ways that I've learned recently of how to be more representative of that in your social media. And then I'll provide some resources to you that I think can help you take action immediately to do this. So, the first thing I want to talk about is your metadata on your website or whenever you're using images. And I am by no means proclaiming to be a website tech guru. But for those of you that do have access to the back end side of your website, whenever you put an image on there, it will often ask for a description of that. I know if you're like me, I've been guilty many times of just saying, oh, I can skip that because we're just trying to get things done as quickly as possible. The downside of that, besides Google not knowing like what that image is that if somebody's using a reader, an e-reader device or something, or is not able to see an image, those kinds of situations come up where then they don't have maybe that context of what is being displayed the way somebody else would that doesn't have those impairments. So it is important to make sure that you're putting in some information into those descriptions so that if somebody is listening to the content or is just not be able to take it in the same way that somebody else might be or on the same device, that they have options to be able to still understand and have the full context of what you're putting out in your messaging. So number 2 is think about emojis. Emojis can be great, right? Because they can draw in a lot of attention. They can break up your text, make it easy to engage with. But sometimes we can overuse them. And especially if somebody, once again, is maybe using an e-reader and they're listening to a text, every time there's an emoji in there, they're going to get a description of what that emoji is. And for some of them, it might be really long, like it's going to say thumbs up, yellow skin, or something. And it just is going to make that message and understanding what you're trying to convey all the more complex for them. So you might think about being selective, 3 or so emojis, maybe max per post, or where you use them more towards the end of the content rather than in front of the word that you're using, so that you have the word and then you have the emoji of that following it, so to make that more inclusive if they were using that e-reader or something to go through that. Number 3 is something called Camelcase. Another thing I learned about recently, but was kind of doing it and didn't even realize it. So if you're using hashtags, which hashtags are great, especially on Instagram, to be able to categorize your content, help others maybe be able to find some of your content. When you're using hashtags, Camelcase is making sure that at the beginning of each word, you're using a capital letter. So that makes it easier for somebody to understand what that hashtag is saying, and for an e-reader to read it correctly and not split the word in the wrong place, which can happen sometimes if you don't do this. So we recommend using Camelcase as starting each word with a capital letter in your hashtags. And the 4th way to think about how you can be more diverse and inclusive in social is to think about the images that you're using. Certainly, we're trying to appeal to who your ideal client is, but we also want to make sure that we have a brand that others feel connected to and they can see themselves in. So thinking about the appearance of the individuals in your photos, whether it's through stock images or you're using graphics of people in those photos, what stereotypes might be coming through in terms of how people are depicted in those photos, are all things that you want to be thinking about in terms of your imagery. So one website that you can find some great diverse photos from is called genderphotos.vice.com. And you can search and look in different ways for if you want more certain communities to be populated, or you want to show maybe more people that are more what am I trying to think of? Maybe a mixed, diverse family, various different things that you can search for and utilize in your content. It might give you some things that you wouldn't show up necessarily in some other stock images, or might be a little bit harder to find on those libraries. So I hope those four things, thinking about your meta descriptions and data of like, how are you actually making sure that if somebody's not able to see or read or hear, various different abilities that might be impaired for them, that they can still understand your content that you're putting out, those emojis as well, using the camel case, and then what's coming through in terms of your images, and making sure that that feels like that's diverse and inclusive for your market and who you're trying to work with and want people to think about your brand. So I hope those four things today give you some ideas and things to think about in terms of how you can improve your social media content to be more welcoming, inclusive of others. I hope you have a great day. We'll be back next Tuesday. Talk to you then.